Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent Rogue Mage, the new Gwent single-player roguelike game that just recently came out, and we are in the middle of our first Hive Mind run, and we have, it's a bit of a slow start, but we have a pretty insane combo that we are working with here, with a highly empowered DETLAFF, and with him, and with our additional Slizzard that we've created, combined with the Girdle of Giant Strength, we have been able to create just astronomically huge Slizzards, and it's been really fun. We actually recently passed up the opportunity to further upgrade DETLAFF because basically we're at the point now where if the DETLAFF plus Slizzard combo is going to work, then we're going to have more points than we need to win. The key question is just, is there ever going to be an opponent that can counter this? And there could be. And so, for that reason, rather than upgrading DETLAFF, we went for Erendite just to give us a little more flexibility with the damage side of things, because it's not something we have a ton of with this deck. We do, fortunately, I believe, still have Thunder, so there is at least that. But, I mean, for that to be our only reliable source of damage is a little scary. We, of course, have a little bit with Cyclops and a lot with Hjalmar, but that's a one-time thing, and Werecat can do a lot of damage, a lot of little bits of damage, so hard to just remove one or two high priority cards unless we happen to have these guys in hand, and for that reason, having something like Erendite that can just destroy something whenever needed, at least once we power it up a little bit more, will certainly be of use to us. I was curious to see, if we did the mental map to see if we had upgraded DETLAFF to see just how many points we would have been able to score, because we just finished an elite battle, I believe, in which we outscored our opponent by nearly 300 points, and if we had a stronger DETLAFF for that, would that have meant we've gone to about 500 points? Certainly seems like that might be possible, but anyways, that is all aside, because we are getting close now to the fiery Fiend boss, and so that is one of the reasons why I wanted to take the sword, Erendite, because damage against this guy we saw when we were using our Savage Fury deck was just amazing. Whereas if we don't have the ability to remove some of their most important cards, then that could make matters much more complicated for us. So we have an event, a normal battle, more events, another normal battle, another event, another normal battle, and then the boss battle. So no opportunities here to restock on energy. And if I remember correctly, this boss actually did have some ways to reduce our energy. Now, we haven't needed much in the past few encounters here, because once we've gotten the Slizzard and DETLAFF combo going, that has been pretty much all we've needed. My key question here is, if we encounter, I think our biggest concern would be the enemy that creates copies of our cards and can do so with the power that we've accumulated on those cards, not just a base copy, but if we have a 100, 200 point Slizzard, which is what we ended up with on our previous encounter, then if they can steal a 200 point Slizzard, that is a big, big problem. Fortunately, we can spread out our boosts across a few different Slizzards, so one big steal is probably not enough for us to lose, but if they do that several times in succession, then we're in for a lot of hurt. So that's the primary concern. But first, we have this event. So let's see what we end up with here. It's a wishing well. I believe we've seen this once before. So let's see. In the center of a small town, you find a beautifully sculpted wishing well from a bygone era. Looking down into the well, you see shimmers of coins and shiny trinkets beneath the water's surface. We can make a wish to remove a card from our deck, or we can leave. I don't remember if we get the choice to choose whichever card we'd like, in which case we've done a great job. I was not talking about it much there, but great job of combining a little bit of thinning out our weakest cards with adding a ton of consistency in our deck because we have the Magnifying Spyglass. So that's been huge for us as well. It means we can basically pull off our combo every single encounter, which is great. The one downside is that if we happen to immediately draw into a bad card, or we can't mulligan out all of our bad cards, then there is still some chance we get one or two bad cards in a match, but even then, we still have at least 80% of our hand should be just about the best cards we can possibly get, but let's see what we can do here. So it looks like we can remove anything. And I think the weakest things we have at this point in time, not that we have two Cyclops actually, but I think the weakest thing we have is probably either the Harpy Eggs or the Night Wraiths. They are Death Wish cards, but in general, we have more Death Wish than we have Consumers. So for that reason, I think the lowest hanging fruit here would be the weakest of our Death Wish cards. So we prefer to dump a Harpy Egg or a Night Wraith. This can help us spawn in more units, which we do have other synergies that go along with that, with Hjalmar and Ethereal. I forgot we got Istrid as well. I think this was a recent addition. So I think we probably dump Harpy Egg. I think that's probably a little bit worse. Okay, you expect nothing to come of it, but you suppose you might as well honor tradition. Making a wish, you throw an offering into the well's waters. I mean, they make it sound like we're expecting to get something in addition to sacrificing. Well, they make it sound like getting rid of a card is a bad thing. In this case, getting to choose what card we remove is a great thing. And I forgot something in addition to that. That'd just be amazing. But it does technically mean we're a little bit stronger now. So now we have our next battle. And let's see who we end up with here. This is the guy I'm scared of. This guy terrifies me. This guy terrifies me. So the problem is spawn and play a copy of a spying enemy unit. Cooldown 2. Every other turn, he can create a copy of our best card as long as it has the spying status. He has a few ways to give us spying. Generally tends to be a little bit front-loaded in that. And so, you know, if we happen to play one of our weaker cards early and they put spying on that and try to create copies of that card, then we can perhaps at least delay some of his ability to cause some serious trouble. I think what we might want to do here is, in previous encounters, we'd focused on going Slizzard plus DETLAFF, of course, and because we have upgraded DETLAFF so that we can non-stop consume DETLAFF every turn, potentially multiple times if we have multiple Slizzards or other consuming units out there, it has meant that we've gotten humongous Slizzards. But that's the concern, is if we get a, 50, maybe even 100 point Slizzard, he can steal that and get all the value from it, from all of our hard work, just instantaneously. He can do that multiple times. Obviously, a Slizzard's going to start small and build up over time, but still. I think what we might want to do here is, rather than loading up on one individual unit like the Slizzard, or at least to the extent that we've done so in the past, I think what we may prefer is if we instead focus on building around, and I really wish this was upgraded further, the Ethereal. Because power of this card does not come from any one copy of it. The power of it comes from creating multiple copies of it. And so, as long as it stays at 4 power and does not get damaged, because we've discovered that if you have Ethereal get damage down to a 3 or 2 or even a 1, then when you create a copy of Ethereal with its order ability, that copy has the same amount of power. Not going to be the base 4 power. It could be lower. So, as long as it stays on 4 power, if we could somehow find a way to boost it up, and then create additional copies of it, then I think that's significantly better. Because at that point, if they're creating 1 copy of Ethereal, I don't even know if they'd use the order ability. If they do, I feel like there's a decent chance they would mess it up and accidentally replace a card that's worth a lot more than 4 points with a 4-point Ethereal. So I'm kind of tempted to see if we can get this guy to steal Ethereal, at least at the beginning, or early on, and in doing so, at least delay how long it takes before he starts trying to steal our Slizzard, or we just try to not really boost up a Slizzard much at all. If we get a Vrand Warrior, that's another card that could potentially get highly boosted that would be susceptible to getting stolen. I mean, if we could somehow make him steal, an unboosted Slizzard, so he has a consuming unit with nothing good to consume, that'd be nice. Or a Death Wish unit, like Night Wraith, with nothing to consume it. And I assume that eventually we probably will have a Slizzard that he'll try to steal, so not sure how sustainable that really is, but then again, in some ways, consumption is a good counter for statuses, because if, for example, one of our Death Wish cards, like the Night Wraith, happens to be the card that gets the spying status on it, we can consume that card. Suddenly we don't have anything with the spying status, and we completely cut off his leader ability. So that is tempting. We do have a Night Wraith in hand. So I think we deliberately keep this in hand, and that might be the first thing we play. At least as things currently stand. Let's dump you, though. Yeah, so it's the cards that build up value over time, and that have that value built into the card itself, like the boosts on the Slizzard, that are most concerning. You know, if it's like a Hjalmar that deals damage, it technically does get stronger over time, but it's, you know, mostly because we've set up with other cards on the board that's not as much of a risk. How do you feel about Cyclops? I mean, it could be a way, if they do end up sealing a high-power Slizzard, it could be a way for us to destroy one of our big Slizzards and get a big chunk of damage out of theirs. I mean, on net, I'm not really sure that's helping us all that much. Yeah. I mean, we could use that as our way to destroy our Night Wraith. If we play this first, they put spying on it, we use Cyclops to destroy it and deal damage to them. We'd rather not damage their Night Wraith, because then we'll trigger their Death Wish, but remain safer than building around the Slizzard. Obviously, he does gain a little bit of value over time, but it's nothing in comparison to the Slizzard. So he's probably someone we'd like to save as well, or keep in hand as well. I do like Girdle Giant Strength, and the reason for that is, if I remember correctly, just the way that the cooldown is going to work with this guy is that generally what happens is that he's going to use this on his second to last turn, but then on his last turn he'll be on cooldown, which means technically we can have one card that we play that he will not be able to answer with his leader ability because he'll still be on that cooldown. And that means if we do eventually get a highly boosted Slizzard, then at least on our, maybe they steal a highly boosted Slizzard, and you know, that does make things closer between the two of us. But if we have the ability to double a Slizzard and they do not, then that is a huge finisher that they do not have. So I mean, like, for example, so if you have, we play what, 10 cards in a match, which means you should have about 4 or 5 leader ability charges, which means potentially get 4 or 5 Slizzards. We'll have 2 that are roughly, or can have up to 2 that are roughly equal in terms of boostage. So if he gets 2 Slizzards or more, we're in trouble. Mostly if he gets more, we're in trouble. If we limit him to 1, maybe 2 Slizzards, we might be okay, especially if we just out-point him with the Slizzard on our last turn using Girdle Giant Strength. There is one particular way I had in mind in which we could actually get more benefit out of this than we have in the past. So I might stick with this. I think I will. Okay, another Cyclops is probably a good thing. We should go Magnifying Spyglass and try to control what we're getting here. I think we still probably do want DETLAFF. I mean, because he's a card that, sure, they could steal, and they'll get the base power on him, especially if we end up increasing that base power over time. But, actually, when we consume him, he'll lose the... Yeah, he'd actually be a great card to get, because if he does get consumed, he'll lose the spying status when he comes back out. So it's a nice, consistent way to get rid of the cards they give spying to. So that's great. And then... Okay, now here's a crazy question. I don't think this is the case. In multiplayer Gwent, this definitely wouldn't be the case, but given how the whole creating copies of things in Rogue Mage tends to work a little bit differently, partially just because of phrasing, but still. If the base Ethereal gets spying, and we continue to use the sword ability, do the subsequent Ethereals that we spawn in, do they also gain spying? In Gwent multiplayer, they would not. But I can't say that definitively for Rogue Mage, given what we've seen thus far, so that does worry me a bit. But I think, in general, what we're looking for here will probably be DETLAFF, possibly first. We might nab another Slizzard, just because, as I was saying, if we can out-Slizzard them, we might be okay. It's risky. It's really risky. But, if we are doing Slizzard at all, then we just need to make a point of splitting our boosts pretty equally between the two Slizzards, because if we have one Slizzard that is very much way above the other Slizzard, then he'll steal the Slizzard that has more points, and he'll functionally have two, and say he gets two Slizzards from that, he gets two maximum power Slizzards, and we have one maximum power Slizzard and one slightly weaker Slizzard, and they win that. So, but obviously if we take Slizzard, we're kind of committing to it. I mean, we don't have to use it to consume DETLAFF every turn. We could use it to, you know, get another Night Wraith, for example. But, I think it is still DETLAFF. I like Hjalmar. Normally he's a finisher. However, given how we need to be careful the order in which we play our cards, we need to try to save our cards that are most stealable for last, so that there's less time for them to steal. We might need to play Hjalmar earlier than we would otherwise play him. I'm also not as much of a fan of the Vrand Warrior. Yes, it is well, on one hand, it's another way to get boosts outside of the Slizzard. So, you know, if they steal Slizzards, they can copy those boosts, but they won't be creating copies of Vrand Warrior, so Vrand Warrior is a way we can differentiate from them. Yeah, that's really the question. The real question is, do we outscore them with boosts by splitting our boosts across more people than they could realistically steal, because they can only steal one at a time every other turn? Or do we just circumvent the boosts altogether and avoid giving them anything that is a good steal altogether by not going much in the way of the Slizzard and playing things like Night Wraith early, getting the spying on that, consuming the Night Wraith, and losing the spying there, trying to have DETLAFF be a card that they put spying on, and just, in the process, look for things like Cyclops to be what destroys those cards so that we don't have a highly boosted card for them to steal. Those are the questions. That's the key question we need to ask, is which one of those are we looking for? I'd said Ethereal could be a good way to work around that. I would have liked if Ethereal was just a little bit higher, more highly boosted. If we had like increased its base power or something like that, this would be a really nice card to do that too. But I was kind of just hoping and praying that we would not encounter this guy in this run, because he is going to be a real problem. This feels like the high-risk approach, to go Slizzard and Vrand Warrior, and just say, well, we'll take our chances, and hope that by splitting boosts across multiple cards that they won't be able to match us quite as well. I think we can still do this. I think we can still do this, if we are mindful of the timing. We will not do it as early as we would have otherwise done it. We will instead lead off with Night Wraith. This will get spying, presumably. They almost always give spying to the first card we play. They pretty much always give spying to the first card we play. We'll consume it, or destroy it with the Cyclops, and in doing so, they will no longer have a spying card to go after. Let's do this.
Silence.
So expecting this to get spying. Okay, that was interesting. They bricked their first card completely. They got nothing out of Pact. That's a little alarming. Now, it might have been a conscious, if you want to call it that, for an AI effort. There's a chance that it deliberately does not give spying to Deathwish units, because it knows that we're trying to bait it into doing that. So it does mess with our plan a little bit, because I was assuming this was going to get spying, and so we'd have reason to consume it now. I mean, we could still do that with, or destroy it now with Cyclops, but there's nothing to damage here. We might be looking at just playing DETLAFF, and again, if they do try to put spying on him, we can consume/destroy him as well, and remove that. So I think we go that route in. I mean, if playing Deathwish units is going to break what they're trying to do, then we'll take it. Okay, don't like that, though. That's a big problem. I mean, it is locked. Okay, it does well. So, we no longer have the preferred way to boost up our Slizzards. We were saying that perhaps we were going to go for the, well, let's just out-boost them by splitting our boosts across multiple cards, and that way they can't steal everything. They can't match all those boosts. They can only match the boost from one card. Well, maybe we are just totally circumventing that now. So they still have not given us spying, is the weird thing. So their leader ability has just been a non-factor thus far. If we do play Germain, then I think they will put spying on him and they will steal him. That's... yes, he does gain some value over time. And this is... by stealing this and locking it, they've immediately made this go from a very high-scoring match to a very low-scoring match. So on one hand, you say, okay, well, we don't care that much if they steal Germain. He's not worth nearly as much as, you know, a highly boosted Slizzard would be worth for them to steal. But we're not going to see any highly boosted Slizzards anymore now that they've stolen DETLAFF. So suddenly we do kind of need to be pinching pennies here, because 1 or 2 points here or there could become a significant difference maker. So we could play a proactive Slizzard. All right, it's not really even proactive. We do have a Deathwish card out there. They would likely give it the spying. DETLAFF, I don't remember when he's locked. He still comes back out because on one hand, he goes to the graveyard. When he goes to the graveyard, he's no longer locked. So it's just a matter of when does it check for when he comes back. Obviously, if he does come back, then he's getting stronger, and that's not really something we want them to do. And if that is the case, and we give them a Slizzard to go along with him, then that's obviously a very, very bad thing. We have given them our setup entirely. Combos and all, not just stealing a highly boosted card. So we could damage you. We probably do damage you with the Cyclops. We don't destroy you, so we don't risk that something bad happens with it if it does come back out of their graveyard. You have a 5 power card you could create a copy of and potentially deal damage to one of our cards with it, and destroy DETLAFF. And okay, so sure, you can in fact get him to get killed if he really wants to. So maybe that's not really a significant factor either way. I think we go for it though. Trigger our Deathwish so we get more rats out here. Like, of course, to get the Deathblow on Erendite, but that's secondary at the moment. There's the spying. They eventually get it out. That is to be expected. What do they destroy is the question. This is higher power. Over they go. DETLAFF doesn't come back out. It does not. Okay, that's big. Okay, so I do... So that was one source of spying. We put it on a Cyclops. It's not a huge deal. So we just, for the most part, we dodged their first round of spying, I think. However, Vran Warrior, I mean, it's not guaranteed to get all that big when we're not going to be focusing that much on the consumption, but it is still perhaps, certainly if there are a bunch of rats on the board, it would be the next best target for them to put the spying on. I'd rather they not get one of these. What do we prefer that they create a copy of? Vran Warrior or Germain? Which one is less dangerous for them to have? think it might be germane. Because if they steal a Vrand Warrior, that significantly limits the value of us consuming stuff. And we still want to be able to do at least some of that, right? Or destroying stuff at all. Granted, I am probably about to destroy this Mage Torturer with combination of Valzer's Thunder plus Erendite on this turn, which means we could get 1 boost on Vrand Warrior. Yeah. We could Cyclops on this. We could Cyclops on this Cyclops. Get rid of that spying. I mean, again, I'm not super concerned about this one, so I think we might save you for a later occasion when there's a more concerning spying unit. But maybe for that reason, we're kind of okay with Vrand Warrior getting spying. Let's do it. Go Thunder. I'm deliberately trying to get rid of you because you are an Assimilate card, which means you technically will gain power over time, and we can also set up Erendite for the death blow. They will have a higher priority card than that Mage Torturer. She gives 1 spying when they play her, but she doesn't give any more. It's, I'm blanking out on his name. Furcart. Furcart is the one that gives spying to one of our cards, a random one of our cards, whenever they play a special card. That is usually this guy's secondary source of giving spying. Either that or he just plays spying cards altogether, the ones that generally give them a big boost. Like that, the Emissary.
The shame I have made.
Okay, so I do like Ethereal here. I'm not sure, well, they... So on one hand, I like Ethereal to transform all these rats into 4 power cards, which can give us some value over time. It's wide boosts, or wide points, as in we're spreading our value across multiple cards rather than having 1 highly boosted card, which generally is going to be the right answer for this guy. Because it's harder for him to steal all that value. On the other hand, the spine card that they have access to right now, or they have 2, technically they could go for, but they could do Cyclops, destroy Cyclops, and destroy Ethereal. Granted, if they want to do that and get rid of 12-point unit and do serious overkill damage, we might be okay with that. We also could use Ethereal to transform this Emissary and force them into do it. Ooh. Hold on. What if we reverse psychology them here? We use Ethereal to transform this Emissary. Obviously, there are fewer 1-power cards for Ethereal to work with in this row, but we could potentially spawn more with a leader ability if we really wanted to. But we do that, so we're forcing them into using their leader ability. I don't think they'll withhold it. If they have the ability to do it, I think they will. And that means they'll be forced into using Cyclops. Hopefully, they do so on this Cyclops and get a bunch of damage, but it's overkill damage. They're losing 12 points on their side to deal what would probably amount to maybe 5, maybe 4 points on our side. 5 points here on our side. So that's probably a trade we'd take. The question is, order of operations wise, would they potentially play a different card, then use the leader ability with Cyclops, destroy the other unit that they play, and then they can still keep this 12-power unit? Depends how smart they are, and I'm not sure what the answer to that is. So I guess it's Ethereal in one case. The alternative would be what we Cyclops, this Cyclops, and force them into doing this, I guess. Is that preferable? I think we still do this. Convert you. Does give you a boost, so I think this is likely going to be the recipient of whatever damage they do. Certainly fits the Cyclops. And I think this is definitely going to be the most difficult encounter. Probably even more difficult than the boss fight. So this, I know we have no other places to restore our energy besides maybe some events, although generally those tend to reduce our energy, if anything, not give it back. So, but if there is a place to use energy, this would be it. Anything we want to remove with Thunder or damage with Thunder? No, not really. Rapid Evolution, I think, would, if anything, be the answer here. See if we get something interesting out of a rat. If it turns into Villain Trettenmirth, which has at times been the most controversial, the most questionable of things that our cards have transformed into. It's the card that destroys the highest unit on the board other than self after 2 turns. They have the highest card right now. That is usually not the case for us. We usually have the highest card with our Slizzards, so that actually would be welcome. I mean, chances are it's going to be something that's just marginally better than a rat, but it's only 2 energy. I think we'll give it a shot.
Welcome back, Geralt of Rivia.
Okay, 7 power unit that has a shield. And so, assuming that they are going to be using some Cyclopses here, that's actually pretty interesting. Now, we'll take a turn before we can apply that shield. Probably like to give it to the Vrand Warrior, because it may be about to get destroyed, but it's definitely an upgrade. So the question is, how are they going to do this? We want them to go leader ability first, or do that and go complete overkill and destroy an 18 power Cyclops. Please do that. You just opted not to use the deploy ability at all. Fair enough. They were not completely stupid. Yeah, I mean, basically I wanted them to destroy an 18 power unit to destroy one of our 4, 5, or 6 power units. So we're at least forcing them to play in a weird suboptimal way. Not exactly the suboptimal way that I was anticipating we might see, but a suboptimal way nonetheless. I think what we do now is we go Germain, melee row, and in doing so, we'll spawn in some 1 power units for Ethereal to continue to do its thing. So again, I think going wide is our friend, and leader ability's on cooldown here, so not as much of a risk of them immediately benefiting from doing something here. And I mean, they do have a better card. I mean, if they're going to continue to use leader ability to create Cyclopses, then they could destroy this Cyclops, and that's a much better target for them to go after, rather than losing an 18 power unit. But again, a little ahead of ourselves here, so let's do this.
We'll defend our homes, no matter what.
Means we have nice ethereal target here. It does boost up our Vrand Warrior, so if they can get another way to get spying, then this Vrand Warrior would be a good target for it. We should have time on our next turn, if necessary. If this does get spying, we can go Slizzard and consume just before they have the chance to activate this leader ability, and so they'll be forced into going Cyclops again. Otherwise, we could even Cyclops this Cyclops and prevent them from using their leader ability at all, which would be really nice. So those are the things we're considering here. We do technically have a pretty big lead, but of course this guy is capable of doing some pretty nasty things pretty quickly. We could give a shield. Not really expecting damage until they use this leader ability, though. So I think we save this. If we can. You're probably not about to get destroyed. They're just loading up on boosts on their units here. This is weird. Playing totally differently than we tend to see this guy play. Continue to do this. Okay. And to that, I might have said this once before in a previous video, but sometimes when you have cards that are trying to spawn into a row or transform into things in a row and what have you, if you are already at the maximum number of cards, sometimes the game, the order in which it checks for different things, makes it so that you actually can't get that last card in, and so we might have just lost a 1-power cow without getting an ethereal in return. It looked out of the corner of my eye for a second there like that might have been how that played out. So if so, that's unfortunate, especially because next turn we'd have to play, we'd have to use ethereal to transform Germain, which is a negative 1 point play, and he is technically still an engine for us. It did boost up the Vrand Warrior, so technically worst comes to worst, we were on net, we were on net getting 0 points out of that. We could, so this turn is the question of, do we want to do something to shut down this spying unit? They might be able to create another spying unit. If they did, they'd presumably want to go after this 8-point Vrand Warrior, which is not amazing, but it is something, and it would still get boosted in the way that ours would whenever we destroy a unit, and we would still like to do that. It's a little unfortunate, and if they can apply spying and create a copy of that unit on the same turn, which they potentially could do, with their leader ability, then we have no way of stopping that. I was just hoping they were going to give their last... take their last opportunity to give spying on their previous turn. We destroy that card with this Cyclops and say, all right, we're just going to force you to play copies of Cyclops for the rest of the match, especially because you're continuing to boost up your units here. So if you're going to destroy something with Cyclops, it's going to be painful. But and then again, we could play a Slizzard just for the sake of having one out and ready to go. I think we probably are looking to do here. As for whether or not we actually use this consumption immediately, that remains to be seen. But it gives us the option. Want to go here and have the option of consuming this spying Cyclops? No, I think it's basically just that I'm looking for another way to be able to destroy this Friend Warrior, if that happens to be what gets the spying. No, but if they create a copy of Friend Warrior, we will use Cyclops to destroy our Friend Warrior, and in doing so, that might boost their Friend Warrior by 1, so it might hang on with 3 power, but then we can destroy it with Alistair's Thunder. I think that's actually our preferred way of disposing of Friend Warrior if it does get spying. And if you get spying, it's just, well, I mean, yeah, you already have spying, but you're not as big of a priority to remove, as we already established. It's not a big deal, but I guess that means we go Slizzard in this row in case we do want to try to eventually remove the only card that has spying. So let's do this. And we do still have a big lead. They will have this leader building, and they'll have, what, 1 more, right? I think we may be able to leave it at this without any additional leader ability stuffs. So what is this? They go Cyclops, they go melee row, and just avoid destroying one of their cards. They do. It's all just boosts. What the heck is this guy's deck? 2 Thaws, 2 Pacts. We destroyed their DETLAFF, or they might have technically destroyed their DETLAFF. Mage Torture we destroyed, and 1 Steel that they used to get DETLAFF. This is not the way I expected this fight to go. It is, granted, in some ways going better than I would have expected, but so they now can only use 1 more leader ability. And so this is where we can start to get a little more aggressive, because we know that worse comes to worse, they will just steal, say, 1 highly boosted Slizzard. And what we could do is we could even throw down our other Slizzard in this row. I think we will do. And we do have the means, if they try to start applying spying to other cards, we do have the means through things like Cyclops and the Slizzard consumption to get rid of those spying units. We could even just transform them if they're weak enough cards, so we don't mind transforming them with Rapid Evolution. Also, we could have justified that. Probably with the Cyclops. Arguably should have, but up to this point hasn't quite been necessary just yet. But we do this because what this allows us to do, which we haven't done in the past, is actually we can consume some stuff with this Slizzard, get a little bit bigger, and then we can actually consume 1 Slizzard with the other Slizzard, consolidate all of our power into 1 Slizzard, and in doing so, we have an even bigger target for Girdle of Giant Strength, which is the thing that I was alluding to before that actually would have been the best way to maximize our point total. Now, technically, it's very risky if your opponent happens to have more power Heart of Terror, which we've talked about in the past. That is the thing that we're scared about, but don't know if this guy's going to have that. What do they do here? Is it spying? It is Cantarella. They talk about from our deck. I'm not sure what that is. It is Consumption, which I don't think matters because they've not stolen any Deathwish units. So I think at the very least, like what we can do here, so they will have leader ability on their next turn. It'll be their last chance to do that. So think what we do. So we consume this Cyclops, and we consume this Cantarella. It gets rid of all spying units. It means worst case situation. We have a 10-point Slizzard that they can potentially apply spying to, and then immediately create a copy of it on their next turn. However, if they do that, we have a 10-point Slizzard that we can then use to continue to consume other things and eventually double its power and make it much higher than their Slizzard. So I still think that's not that big of an issue. I think their last play, I remember in the past, has been Joachim de Wet, which is a card that they play on our side. It is a spy. It gives us 4 power, but then it plays a card from their deck and boosts it up by a lot. So that is a little dangerous. It means they do have, I think, what is technically a pretty decent finisher. Although we technically, if we were to completely flood our rows, could prevent them from using it altogether. That's going to be possible with Germain. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Means we need 2 more cards here. Cyclops will destroy something when we play it. So that's would require that we use Rat Swarm, basically. Not necessarily sure that I want to do that, but it is a possibility. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that means 9 is the maximum number in a row. Play you. You are 1 more unit, but you destroy another unit, so we stay at 7. Means to consume you, we're down to 6. Consume you, down to 5. Spawning 4 rats does completely fill our rows. So we should still be able to consume now on this turn. Does also mean this guy's getting bigger, which they could potentially steal, but if they do that, still think that's, I mean, it technically can get a little bit stronger as if we continue to consume with the Slizzards, but again, since we have Girdle Giant Strength as our finisher, I think we'll still be okay there. So I think, ooh, right. We've not yet played a card from our hand. I knew that. So it's going to be Cyclops. Just a question of, I think we want to destroy a small card like a rat. Don't really care much about the damage. Not too concerned about this Barbiazzi doing consumption, because again, they don't have any Death Wish cards. And we just want to keep the big things so that we can use Slizzard to consume other things on our last turn, and in doing so, get a really big Girdle Giant Strength finisher. Should be worth, on the order, if this consumes you, you'll be up to 13. This consumes you, you're up to 23. Which means this is a 23-point Girdle Giant Strength, which is not amazing. Certainly seen better in other encounters, but it's not bad. Okay, so let's do this. Just hit a rat. And let's hit one of these. Does boost you up. So if we wanted to Rapid Evolution, this would be our last chance to do so, because last turn, if anything, we were saying maybe we Rat Swarm in anticipation of trying to brick their last card altogether. They still have the highest card, so if we do happen to get worst case scenario Villain Threaten Mirth, it is actually a really good play for us. And it would have just enough time, I think, still to destroy this Cyclops, because it does take 2 turns to activate. Again, this is technically, I think, the hardest encounter we could possibly have, so I think it is worth it. It's Dandelion. It's a 3-point upgrade. Could be worse. Could be a lot better, but it could be worse. Okay, they just didn't have any. They tried to use their lead ability, they couldn't. Okay, they play Joachim early. Okay, that was the card I was expecting them to play last. Technically, they could have played him first, and then they could have created a copy of him with their leader ability, but they opted not to. That was a little bit weird. They're also consuming. Okay, now, no, they are using their leader ability to create a second copy of him. So this is what I was referring to. This does mean they have a pretty decent point slam between those things. They were not able to catch us with that alone. It now means that we no longer have a great option for flooding this row with cards, but we will, since they no longer have their leader ability, we will, I think, still proceed by consuming the biggest card in this row with you, get you up to 13, then consume you, get you up to 23, double the 23, and I don't think this enemy has Morkbar Heart of Terror. If they do, we lose. If they do and they play him, we lose. But think we go for it. As I said in the past, I remember they'd done Hoakim last turn. So the fact that they played that on the second to last turn does definitely raise some questions. I'm not really sure what to expect with their last play here, which does make me a little nervous. But, I mean, we have Girdle Giant Strength, right? So, I think we just play for it. Yes, we could give a shield before we do this. Not really sure it's going to matter, because I don't necessarily think they are going to do damage to us either way. And if they do have more for our card to tear, it doesn't make a difference if we put a shield on this lizard. It'll still damage us through that, so, you know, take your pick. I mean, I guess we'll do it anyway. So now we, as soon as you're done with this, I'd appreciate it if you'd let me, thank you, proceed. Like so, it'll also boost up this Friend Warrior. They did put Spying on it, but do they have any way of stealing cards that have Spying without their leader ability? I don't think so. So we consume the biggest card with you, and then we consume the other Slizzard with you, get you up to 23, and then we double you with Girdle Giant Strength. That was the plan. So it does give us a pretty big margin for error here, although because we have allocated so many of our points into this one card, we are very vulnerable if they have a way to somehow mess with this. So that's the biggest worry. Is there anything leader ability wise that could change that equation? I mean, if they have a way of messing with this lizard, we lose. And like we lose 46 points, we drop down to what? 53? So unless we have some leader ability thing that's going to give us, you know, on the order of 14 points, I don't think it's going to happen. Then, you know, unless we... No. I quite literally think there's no way we could possibly make that happen. So I think it's just, we live and die by this lizard. And this is quite literally the single most difficult enemy that we will encounter. It is a hard counter to our deck in many ways. And probably, by most accounts, you would say this is an auto-lose situation. So with that in mind, do they have an answer? They don't. That is going to be pretty big, but it shouldn't be big enough. Oh my goodness. Okay. Breathe a humongous sigh of relief as I am maybe it's a little bit getting ahead of ourselves here, but if we can beat that guy, we should be in decent standing for the rest of this run. We spent a little bit of energy, not that much, but we of course don't have any way to get additional energy unless we happen to get more from an event later on. But Morford, we do have one of him. Boosts all allied units by 1. Assuming we do Flood Rose, kind of like we did in that match. That could be useful, although that's less so what we ideally do. We're most of the time trying to load up on as many points as possible on this lizard. So, and that's generally going to make our rows smaller, if anything, not bigger. So, destroy an allied unit on this row if there are no targets to destroy self. Basically, the idea here is you have a weak 1-power rat or cow. You destroy it with a griffin and just replace a 1-power unit with an 11-power unit. So it's a good finisher in that way because it doesn't require any additional setup, but just not sure that really compares to the other stuff we're looking to do here. Let's see for remove. No, nothing here that we want to get rid of. This might even be a skip. Oh, did we get rid of the option to skip? We might have gotten rid of the option to skip as one of our difficulty additions. In which case, we could re-roll, but given our lack of access to energy, I think we'll just settle for Morvid. It's not a bad card per se, it's just it leans a little more into an aspect of our deck that we are not focusing quite as much on. We could still support it with things like Rat Swarm for sure, but we'll take it, because we maybe kind of sort of have to. More than anything, though, very pleased that we were able to take out that enemy there. So we still have 2 battles, normal battles that is, 2 events, and a boss. So I think at this point, We've taken out what I thought was going to be by far the most difficult enemy. So our key question is just, can we hold on to enough energy that we have enough remaining for this encounter, that we have the option in particular to use thunder to destroy stuff? Because I think that's going to be the one thing we're really leaning on that energy for, is we don't have a lot of damage without thunder. So we really want to have enough to do that. So let's see what we get here. It's a stone altar. You discover an altar with mysterious runes etched into its moss-covered rock. Offerings of fruit and flora adorn the shrine, presumably deposited by the locals to gain favor with the gods. These are hallowed grounds, it seems. We can offer something and lose 5 energy. Well, that's the thing. Not really sure we can afford that. We could pray and gain 20. Technically, it is slightly overkill. But we were just saying how perhaps energy is the one thing here that could be a deciding factor. And so, I mean, presumably if we lose the 5 energy, we'll get some kind of upgrade. I'm not sure if we've seen this stone altar before, so I'm not entirely sure. Is it getting a new card? Is it... In which case, probably don't care too much about that. We like the cards we have right now, and we just want to be drawing into those every time for the most part. So adding more to the equation just means less likely to get the ones we really want. And if it's upgrading a card, like increasing its base power, obviously for DETLAFF, that would be amazing, although I'm not sure we'd be able to do that for a key card. For Ethereal, as I was mentioning previously, that could be useful as well, but that's nice to have, probably not a need to have. I think you just go for the energy here, and that's obviously way overkill. So I think we just take the 20. Kneel in the dirt beside the altar and bow your head in contemplation. Though you are not the praying type, to say the least, you use the opportunity to rest and reflect upon your journey so far, and you feel all the better for it. I think that sounds familiar. We may have seen one of these before. Okay, so I love the energy. And we have 2 more normal battles. What will this one be? Cultist Freeze. We might have seen him once before, very early on. He is considered a hard enemy. If there are 4 or more units on the battlefield, destroy the lowest power unit, then boost the lowest powered allied unit by 2. Okay. I think we can deal with this guy, theoretically, pretty easily. It might require that we use the occasional rat swarm, but we did just load up on energy, so that is perhaps something that we are not totally against. Cooldown 1. It's going to be kind of painful, but what I'm thinking here is that the problem with this is if we are relying heavily on the weakest unit, then it could get destroyed, and that would be an issue. However, of course, for the most part, when it comes to the cards we're playing, we're going to have some really big stuff like the Slizzards, and if our lowest unit happens to be a Death Wish unit, then getting that destroyed could actually benefit us. So I like that a lot. I think Morva probably doesn't make as much sense in this encounter because, yes, we will probably get some 1-powered units out here just to give us some flexibility so that, you know, we don't risk having something like Slizzard be the lowest card early on when it has not yet gotten a big round of boosts. But we get about a bunch of rats out here. It is largely just so we can sacrifice them and make sure that it's not Slizzard that gets destroyed. So for that reason, I think more of a, you know, boosting those up. I mean, yes, we can still boost up things like Slizzard, the cards that are actually going to stay on the board, but probably not as much of a priority. And with all the consumption and destruction, Cultist Priest could actually make Fran Warrior more powerful. So that's definitely going to be a nice card. Again, if we can keep it alive long enough that it gets boosted so it's not at risk of being the lowest card on the board. Which is, again, why getting some rats out early would probably be useful. They might have a Fran Warrior. I wouldn't rule it out. I don't remember. I think we dump more of it, though. More consumption. I mean, assuming we can get DETLAFF out here, that's definitely beneficial. Not sure we like Cyclops as much, especially now that we have other ways to destroy cards. Because I think we want to focus on total opposite of what we did in the previous encounter. We want to load up on a bunch of points on just a few units so that way they're not at risk of being the ones that get destroyed. Okay, and if Ethereal is probably a card that, well, I mean, it does go wide, and it does give us some value out of what would otherwise be weak cards. We do, I think we are probably starting with a Rat Swarm. Well, let's use the Spyglass. We're gonna want DETLAFF, and we're gonna want Slizzard for sure. Gonna want Girdle Giant Strength as well. That can be our last card, so it's probably 1, 2, and 3, or 1, 2, and 3, some order like that. Yeah. Okay. We did get the Deathblow on Erendite in the previous encounter, so we'll have a little bit of time to power him up. That's good. Because we like to have this be a reliable source of, at least capable of destroying one reasonably power card when we eventually go up against the boss. So I think we will Rat Swarm on our first turn here, which should cover basically anything that we play on our first turn. What is the most susceptible to getting destroyed? What are we most concerned about losing, potentially, to their leader ability? I mean, obviously, we really want to keep Slizzard on the board. And with just one turn of... Once it does gain the ability to use its consumption, it should be pretty safe. Vran Warrior eventually will be safe, but it'll take a little more time to build that up, so it might be a little more vulnerable. So in some ways, you can make the case for this be our first turn play, but then again, it's not quite as important as you. So I think we will go first with the rats. Row shouldn't matter much. At least not yet. So obviously, as things currently stand, we're guaranteeing there are going to be 4 units on the board. So we're guaranteeing that, yes, a rat will be destroyed. Technically means if we were to play Vran Warrior, we're guaranteeing that it's going to get boosted up immediately. But that's 1 point of boost, whereas every turn to Slizzard is usually worth a lot more than just 1 point. So put you here, because I think what we're going to do is, if anything, if we are going to play Ethereal, we're going to want to give you plenty of room to consume that stuff and be in a row by yourself and not be anywhere near things like Slizzard. So I think we go with that. Oh, okay. Pretty sure we got a random card turning into Artist previously. So that actually makes Ethereal very, very weak, but we could actually swap it out with Istrid later on. So that's the nice flexibility that Istrid will give us, but I think we do still go DETLAFF here. He will, on the initial play, be weaker than 5 power. He'll get damaged by Artist, but when he gets consumed and brought back out, he will not get hit by Artist, because this is only when units are played, and he gets summoned from our graveyard when he gets destroyed. So first round, he gets hurt. But, technically, if we really wanted to, we could go Thunder, damage you by 3, and then Erendite could destroy you. Obviously, the earlier we did that, the better it would be. I'm just not as big as Artist may seem. I'm not actually sure he's enough of a threat to be super concerned about him. Do we need to spend any energy at all when, for the most part, being able to summon DETLAFF from our graveyard circumvents any issue that we would have with Artist? Possibly. Now, if they have ways to damage our big cards, that'd be more of a problem. Now they're getting small little cards. Should mean pretty safe to do this. And we probably will just destroy Herald with Erendite, because this will damage one of their units by 1, which would normally mean Herald's PAL, which damages them by 1, but damages us by 2, so on net they benefit from it, so might as well just take away that ability from them. It's a little bit overkill with the damage, but that's likely to be... well, we're just looking for ways to get the death blow on Erendite for the most part in these early stages. So, oh yeah, and it does seem as though Artist is going to continue to be the recipient of their boosts. So, yeah, if we wanted to destroy him, we probably did need to destroy him early, but again, we're not that worried about it. We will get lowered to a 2, which is a little scary, but because there are all these 1s, ooh. I mean, technically, if a Herald's PAL gets destroyed and happens to hit you, then that's unfortunate. It would destroy you. Damage a random unit by 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's a 20% chance that that happens. We could make it less likely. We can't boost it because we don't have cleanse, but we could, if we were really concerned, use Rat Swarm, spawn in 4 more units in the board, and then we have substantially more cards, and at that point it goes from a 20% chance to what, an 11% chance that this lizard happens to get destroyed by one of these Herald Pals, assuming they can only destroy 1 per turn with their leader ability, but they might have other ways to do it. So I think we're probably still okay, even if this does get destroyed, especially because we'll be playing Friend Warrior soon, and that should also be something that gets a lot of boosts. So I'm not that worried. Maybe it's my hubris, and it will come back to haunt me, but we shall see. Okay, Melusine Cultist gives him a little bit more damage. Okay, fine. Overkill damage on a rat. Totally fine. Okay, this is the Girdle Giant Strength. That's fine. Why don't we... I mean, technically, yes, we will want to get both of you guys boosted up, and we could do what we did last time and have one of the Slizzards consume the other Slizzard on our last turn, and then double down on that one Slizzard to rule them all, and that's technically worth the most points. I don't remember if this guy has more Frog Heart of Terror. Probably don't want to take that risk. Probably rather not take that risk. And this is why I'm not that concerned about Artis, because DETLAFF will keep on coming back. He'll keep on getting stronger. It means these Slizzards will keep on getting stronger, and now they should be pretty darn safe, technically, if I was going to play Friend Warrior on this turn, which I probably was going to do. I should have done that first. But he has the armor, which means that's actually tanking all the damage from Artis, which is really nice. So even if they do have a way, they likely will, destroy Herald's Pal and hit one of our cards, and we should still be fine. But yeah, I should have played that first. But when they destroy stuff, we get boosted. So Friend Warrior will eventually become quite big as well. Okay, and now I think, as we said, Ethereal is probably not a card we particularly want to play with Artis on the board. So we probably go for Istrid here and give him a little bit of time to power up, and then eventually use him to swap out Ethereal for something else. It's actually kind of weird. They have Herald's Pals that are now above 1 power. I mean, now we're going to lose a rat, but that's not a huge problem. If we do actually have the lowest card on the board, then we could lose it, and that means Friend Warrior is a little bit close, and Istrid could be potentially become a little bit close. Friend Warrior remains the lowest, though.
Something too. I'll break you.
And we can do... Let's try to even these guys out a little bit more by having the lower Slizzard consume the more powerful DETLAFF. Now you're up to 7, so you should be pretty darn safe, because, you know, this rat will be the next thing that gets destroyed, and if they happen to have a way of destroying you through other means, then it's going to be one of these 3s, possibly Istrid. If we lose him, it's not the absolute end of the world. He's a luxury, not a necessity. These are the key things here. So I think this will do. Okay, Olaf. That benefits a lot from receiving damage. We lost the rat, which means now Istrid is the lowest card. So we may want to use him here. May want to use him here. And swap out Ethereal and possibly Morphed, depending on what else we get. Let's see. Germain would give us a bunch... Actually, both of these would give us a bunch of 1-power cards, which would be rather convenient right around now. So I think that is basically exactly what we're looking for here. Get rid of you. And... I mean, yes, you work. Not going to have a lot of consumption left. And yes, we have Barbayazi, but when we have DETLAFF, of course, the priority is always consume DETLAFF over everything else. We'll have a Werecat, which also is something we'd kind of like to consume, but I think I guess we keep Morphed and drop you. Technically, those are cards that would have synergized with Morphed, but, you know. Can only play so many things. So yeah, now we are likely to lose Istrid. However, he's basically done his thing, so that's kind of totally fine. Oh, we also haven't played anything on this turn. I knew that. Well, we can play Germain and avoid that being the case by spawning in more stuff, or ideally, technically, we play Werecat, and that means that we can damage, well, I mean, we don't really want to damage Olaf, because that's going to increase the amount of boosts he receives, so we kind of prefer to put you here. We also don't love damaging you either, because it makes them easier to destroy, which is something they do want to do as well, but so be it. This is now the lowest card, could get destroyed. It is a Thrive card, which means on 1 power it is super easy to trigger that Thrive, but it may not last long enough for us to see that. If it does get destroyed, it's going to damage all of you guys as well. Once again, don't love that, because it might mean they get destroyed, and we don't really want that to happen, and that is what happens, but, you know, it is still damage at the end of the day. So yeah, that's a classic combo, Artist plus the Drone Berserker, because it immediately transforms into a Bear Abomination. But Germain wanted to play the Werecat first, just to see if it did survive, then Germain would have boosted it via Thrive. So, I mean, technically, the longer we give you, the more time you have to spawn stuff in. Then again, Barbiyazi charges, consuming the DETLAFF means we can power up DETLAFF and the Lizard, by extension, more quickly as well. So, I mean, it shouldn't really matter at this point, because these guys are certainly doing all right here. Don't need to be too concerned about them. There's the 1 power card getting destroyed. I mean, if you want to split damage across this row here and destroy some cows and power up our Grand Warrior in the process, that's okay. We'll take that. So now, why don't we will, I think, go Barbiyazi at this point. Which will, assuming it survives, be used to consume DETLAFF again. So in multiplayer Gwent, there is a card that destroys the highest unit, or units, if there are units tied, for the highest power in a row. We've not seen any such cards in Rogue Mage, so I don't think that's about to happen, but theoretically, if they did have that capability, then they'd obviously be doing a whole lot of damage to us there. So, you Gwent multiplayer players are probably looking at this and sweating a little bit, but we'll be fine. We'll be fine. You don't have any damage cards, which is kind of silly. But, okay, so now we do this. And we do this again. And then we do that. And then we do that. And then we do this. Technically, I suppose we could have done that first and then consumed and would have been worth a little more, but now we're just getting more value out of it on our next turn, so no big deal there. Okay, Sabrina will deal some damage to us, assuming they can destroy her, and they will. But once again, it's going to boost us in the process, so it's not a terrible thing. So here's what we could theoretically do. If we were being super greedy and just wanted to maximize our point total, we could consume DETLAFF with this lizard, get you up above 100, then consume that lizard with this lizard, get you up to almost 200, and then double you for even more points on Girdle of Giant Strength. The reason why that's generally not a good idea is, again, because if they have Morkvarg Heart of Terror, they're reducing that 1 highly boosted card down to a 4, which means we'd be losing, yeah, enough points for, technically speaking, even if they did that, we'd still have at least 57, 58, 59 points here, and we'd still have a 22-point DETLAFF. Technically, we should still be safe to do that. So one thing that I was thinking is, we were talking about going for a full randomization, ultimate RNG run, but after seeing just how many points we can get with DETLAFF and how we passed up the opportunity to further upgrade DETLAFF, I'm now also very intrigued to try out a maximum pointage run and just go for the same thing, but go all in on DETLAFF. And I think if we don't concern ourselves too much about, you know, holding back in situations like this where, yeah, theoretically our opponent might be able to counter us with Morkvarg Heart of Terror, if we pay no mind to that and just accept that we might lose if they have the counter, in the name of trying to maximize our point total, we could easily hit 500, possibly even 1,000. And this is coming from someone who's scored 1,000 points in Gwent multiplayer. I think it's definitely possible with this combo, if we just powered up a little bit more, or get a third Slizzard, in fact. So we won't focus on that much here, for the aforementioned reasons. But we will do this. To get a 374 power Slizzard. Almost a 500. Should still be fine even if this somehow gets answered. Theoretically. Sort of. If not, then I'm going to look really silly here. But we shall see. We'll be fine. We'll be fine. We'll be totally fine. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. So yeah, if we go all in on that, then we could potentially get just totally crazy numbers. Because for the most part, we're holding back a little bit just to avoid the potential counter. Okay, let's see. Herontheer, spawn a 1 power copy of a unit in your hand on this row. Oh boy. This may not sound that good. 1 power copy, Lids. What use is that? It's amazing. Why? That means 1 more Slizzard or 1 more DETLAFF. And initially, it's 1 power, but if you have a Slizzard that starts consuming stuff, obviously, once it starts consuming stuff, it's going to be a lot more than 1 power, and if it means you're getting 1 more consumption on DETLAFF every turn, then that is, that's going to add up to a whole lot more points. Or, if you just get a second DETLAFF, that's also pretty amazing. Granted, we, for the most part, since we have unlimited consumability on DETLAFF, since we've upgraded him and he can come back out every time we consume him, getting a second DETLAFF is not a huge factor because then consumption becomes our bottleneck, not the DETLAFFs. So yeah, it really is consumption that is our bottleneck. So yeah, it would pretty much mean we're looking for this to be another Slizzard. 1 power Slizzard is a little bit vulnerable. That's the upside of having a 1 power DETLAFF is if it does happen to get destroyed, then it's still coming back out, which is really nice. But that's really tempting. Obviously, we know what Cyclops does. It's useful, but it's mostly a secondary way of destroying stuff now that we have our Slizzards set up the way that they are set up. This is also a way to consume once and boost all copies of the unit on the road. Generally, what this is, and it does the same thing with multiplayer generally, the idea here is you get a card that has a bunch of copies on the board. Like, for example, you have a row full of rats. 1 power rats. You consume 1 of them. The consumption is not a huge deal. It just boosts up the Chimera by 1, but it boosts all the other rats by 1. And so it's, you know, it turns into a way to get those rats a little bit bigger. Just see what the remove options are. Absolutely not. I mean, Morvid we could potentially consider. We're saying now we didn't necessarily want to add a Morvid recently, but I think we got to take care of there. That's a little too good to pass up. Does make it difficult now. If that is in fact a card that we...
Lionhead Spider is a beauty compared to the sad monstrosity worshipped by this madman. Whatever this thing is, I don't care to know.
Is that our first time defeating that enemy? Also, the Lionhead Spider? That is a Witcher 1 reference? Might even be from the books, but I specifically remember in The Witcher 1, there's like this very remote, near the end of the game, cave in which there are these cultists and bandits and what have you that maul you as they're raving about this lion-headed spider thing. It was weird. If it sounds weird, it's because it was. But let's go on to this event. Now, again, we got energy back from the previous event, and that means we're actually in pretty decent shape here. We didn't need to spend much of any for that encounter. And we have seen some events do cost energy. Troll Bridge. Let's see. You come to a bridge guarded by a rock troll carrying a makeshift spear. Upon seeing you, he blocks your path. Costs to pay troll toll, he demands. Costs you pay to get across. So we could remove the magnifying spyglass. Absolutely not. This is amazing consistency. We love it. We could remove Herontheer. We just added it. We've obviously been successful without it, but we would like it. Cyclops is definitely the weakest card. I was just saying how it didn't feel necessary to add another one to our deck. However, having 1 or 2 of them is a nice way to give us a little more damage, because as we've said before, that is something that we are a little bit lacking with our current setup, so we're kind of at just the right amount, is basically what I'm getting at, is adding 1 more, overkill. Takes away from the other nice cards that we want to play. But making sure that we have at least 1 in hands in a given round, a given match, so that we can use it whenever we really have something that we must get rid of on our opponent's side, is useful, especially when we know that the boss we're about to go up against does have some high priority cards to remove that don't have a lot of power, but there are just a high quantity of them. So the number of ways in which we can remove things does start to become important. So for that reason, I'm almost thinking we dump Caranthir. Basically just depends on how confident are we in Alzur's Thunder being a sufficient source of damage, plus the Erendite, which is now, what, up to 5 damage, I believe? And we have one more normal fight in which we might be able to get the death blow and get it up to 6 damage for the boss. Maybe we can dump it. Okay. That'll let us pass. So, in some ways, we thinned out what was one of our weaker cards. You can kind of think of it as we traded a Cyclops for a Caranthir, which, by most accounts, you would say is certainly an upgrade. It's just that we already have a lot of the kind of things that Caranthir gives us. Basically, Caranthir is a greedy card. Win by more, as we've said a lot already with this deck. We've discussed a lot in this very video. Question of, do you win by more, which sure is fun and exciting, and you can potentially get a personal high score, but if it means that you're a little more vulnerable to counters because you don't have as many ways to be nimble and adapt when your opponent throws you for a bit of a loop, then that could be problematic, and that's why having something like Cyclops that just gives us the damage that we would otherwise be somewhat lacking is nice. So that's why I'm not elated by that development, but let's jump into our last battle here before the boss fight. The Prophet. Have we seen you before? You are considered hard. Allied deploy abilities trigger randomly an additional 1 to 2 times. What the heck? I don't think we've seen him. And that's kind of scary, because that means I have no idea what to expect. Other than, I mean, yes, additional deploy abilities. There are some very strong deploy abilities out there, including things like Morkvar Card of Terror, which we've talked about a whole lot because it is the single best counter to our deck. But do they have that? Do they have other cards with deploy abilities that are not as concerning? I have no idea. So is that reason enough to try to play around Morkvarg? It could be. Honestly, it could be. We do have DETLAFF in hand. That's great. We do have Girdle Giant Strength. That is, barring Morkvarg Heart of Terror, also great. Probably looking to dump Night Wraith, especially because we do have DETLAFF, and this will definitely be our preferred consumption target. Werecat is also not a huge priority because we still have a consumption target already. We, if anything, would like more consumption. With a Slizzard or two, we can, of course, make that happen with Magnifying Spyglass if necessary, but it'd be nice to get one of them. Don't know. Don't have a lot of setup for Morvid right now. Don't really have... I mean, we got rid of the cards that spawn in more units, so maybe we dump you. Okay, and there is the one Cyclops we have. Hjalmar also benefits from having a lot of cards on the board, so let's make sure that we get... So here's the thing. Now that we've added Caranthir to the equation, we have more cards that we would like to play than we are able to guarantee that we draw. So, of course, we want to have our 2 Slizzards, yes. However, for our third card, is it Caranthir? Is it the Vran Warrior? Is it Istrid, which might help us get additional good cards? Is it even Ethereal, maybe? We can only guarantee 3 of those, which is in large part why I have been a little hesitant to just add more and more and more good cards to our deck, because we already have the key cards we're looking for to set up and pull off our combos. Suppose we'll go for this trio, in which case, technically, Caranthir creates a copy of a card in our hand, which means we need to already have a Slizzard in our hand. Then we need to play Caranthir before we play that Slizzard. So the order of operations is a little tricky there as well, especially when we don't start with one of these cards in our hand. So it functionally means we're waiting 2 turns before we can use Caranthir. So I think that means we need Slizzard first, then we'll go Caranthir, then we'll get the last Slizzard, think we still do that. And I think we go... Try DETLAFF first, because... Or maybe... I was going to say we try DETLAFF first, and if they have deploy damage abilities, then DETLAFF gets destroyed. It actually benefits us. But if they have deploy lock abilities, and they shut down DETLAFF altogether, that's a concerning thing. So, I mean, I have no idea what kind of deploy abilities to expect. So do we use something like Werecat that is lower risk, because we don't care about it as much, and if it gets shut down, so be it. It also doesn't have anything to damage with its deploy ability here, but it can still do stuff with its Death Wish, and mostly, it's just a sacrificial lamb. Yeah, I think we played safe. Because this is just because I have no idea what they're going to do. It is not optimal per se. That's a bunch of Thrive. Means they'll get more boosts, and we are not averse to using Erendite here. Because although it's only a 2-power unit, it's a 2-power unit with 2 armor. But because it is Thrive, remember that means it'll get boosted whenever they play something higher than this. So this is like an amazing card to play at the very beginning of a match. Because it starts low, but it gains value over time. And 4 of them is pretty substantial. So that's a little scary. Might as well get rid of one of them with Erendite, because they will eventually be worth a lot more than just 2 points. So I think we will use that. But perhaps we're a little more comfortable using DETLAFF now. You know, if they're just going to do greedy deploy abilities and try to put up a bunch of points, we can probably outgreed them. And we need to wait a turn before we use Slizzard anyway, so that we can combine Caranthir with it. So for that reason, I think we do go DETLAFF here. Trigger that Thrive. We'll destroy their Thrive. Power up Erendite for future occasions. Okay, what other types of deploy abilities do they have? More Thrive, and moving cards and damaging them in the process. I mean, we'll... Oh, I mean, yeah, if you want to destroy DETLAFF, that works for me. Now, here's the thing. We use Caranthir to create a 1-power copy of this lizard. It is very vulnerable. And it does happen in the same row. But we'll try it, and of course, worst comes to worst, it gets destroyed. We go back to our original 2 copies of this lizard. So it's, in that way, that's kind of what I meant before when I said it's a greedy, win more, nice to have, but not need to have kind of thing. So do they have more damage here? This is what we really didn't want to see. The lock terrifies me. Not on DETLAFF. Okay, that's substantially worse. Substantially worse than them destroying the lizard, because now we can no longer consume DETLAFF over and over again. That was the thing that I was fearful of. As I said at the beginning, lock was the problem. And they did have it. Don't care about you getting locked. We don't really care about you getting locked either, because we can still go this route. But that's big. Probably going to need to spend some now potentially significant energy in this encounter. Of course, this is our last battle before the boss fight, and I don't think we're going to use 71 energy in the boss fight anyway, even if this boss that we're hopefully about to face can just remove some of our energy. I don't think it's that substantial of amounts of energy. So I mean, we still want to get a Slizzard out here, because even if we can't continue to consume DETLAFF, we want to get a big Slizzard so we can use Girdle Giant Strength to double its power. I think what we're probably going to do is we're going to be rapid evolutioning some of these locked guys and seeing what we can get in return. Probably most significantly this 1-power Slizzard, because it's not really doing us much good right now. So I think it's Slizzard here. And then it is Evolution on you. Ooh. Now that's interesting. Much higher power, and also gives us the option to swap out some cards every turn, draw one card, move another card into our deck, and if we happen to get Istrid, that could lead to more boosts on either Istrid or the cards we draw into, so that would be a really nice combo as well. So, I mean, we'll use it to see what we get. Given how we've lost our preferred Death Wish card, we'd kind of really like to get Death Wish here, and Cyclops is maybe not as meaningful, and consumption in general, the things that destroy cards, not as meaningful until we get more Death Wish, and when we do, we're probably still looking for a Slither to be the thing that it does the destruction. So, I think we dump you. I think that is technically preferable. Okay, lots of boosts.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Yeah, this guy is scaring me. This guy is starting to scare me. Okay, so I think what we might do, now that we've drawn to Ethereal, this is a win condition that we've not been leaning on all that much, or we've tried to at times and it just hasn't worked out for us. However, if we were to say Rat Swarm and give Ethereal a bunch of targets to transform into, or to transform from, and that would be useful, and that would also power up Hjalmar and Morvad if we go the more wide approach here, which does seem like that's going to be something we're going to need to consider, and we could even possibly even consider an early Girdle Giant Strength on Ethereal, get it up to 8 power, so that way whenever it does transform, we're getting a much stronger version. So that is kind of tempting. Yeah. Let's use Dodric first. I'm really looking for not so much you, although this is another good way to get wide stuff happening, and you do synergize with one another. Maybe we prefer you to Baba Yazi. I mean, this is a way to further consolidate power into one unit. If we consume things with Baba Yazi, and then consume Baba Yazi with this lizard, and then consume this lizard with our other lizard, and then double the power with the Girdle Giant Strength, that is technically the way to maximize value from Girdle Giant Strength in all likelihood. But it's just not as nice without being able to use DETLAFF. And this is not a... I mean, it is a component to the... It would be still a pretty significant contributor to it, I suppose. Alright, I guess we keep Barbayazi. But I do like Jermaine, and that was tempting. But let's just try dabbling a little bit here with what would be a slightly different win condition we're playing around. Trying to create more ethereals. And if we will consume these guys, because once again, we are acting on the assumption that although we can't get these guys back up from our graveyard, getting a big Slizzard could still be a key to success when combined with Girdle Giant Strength. Okay, now they're doing a bunch of consumption. I'm curious what they do consume, because those Thrive cards are not things they want to consume. Oh no, but they have, yep, they've created some Death Wish. Okay, we have a big deficit that we need to find a way to work our way back from here. I mean, yes, we do have a finisher that we're working toward, true, but not sure that is going to be a huge help for us at this stage just yet. Technically speaking, Morvad and using that to make Ethereal more powerful early on means every subsequent Ethereal is going to be 5. Then again, they're all 4s now, and then we bump them up to a 5 after the fact with Morvad. That also does work. So, just don't have any other great options here unless we want a Hjalmar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 damage is enough to remove one of their Thrive cards. I mean, at 8 power, it's unlikely they'll be able to trigger that again, but it is potentially something that could be useful to dispose of here. Let's try you. It's another Morvad. Technically, it is a 1 higher base power Morvid, so I suppose, why not? And... because normally we'd play the Slizzards early, right? To maximize the amount of time we have to consume DETLAFF, but that doesn't work anymore. And if we do want to play the Slizzards in the same row so we can have one consume the other, so we have a bigger target for Girdle Giant Strength, and there just aren't very many things for us to consume, so that timing is not important, because this Slizzard could consume that DETLAFF right now. And we don't really want to consume Dodric, because he's still helping us out a bit. And the more we do this consumption, the less powerful things like Hjalmar and Morvid become. So I think we do. Go this route here. And just destroy you. Not perfect. Technically still, yeah, we're not trying anything else. We should have enough time to consume everything we want to consume in this row if we get Slizzard down next turn. So it's not really necessary for us to consume right now. And again, that means slightly more points on Morvid. We should do this. And I think we need to get aggressive. That is a card we'd like to destroy. It's gonna, I deliberately played it all the way to the right, or did it to the one all the way on the right, because I assumed it was not gonna be something we wanted Ethereal to consume / destroy, but it actually is. We'll get there eventually. Okay, random amount of boosts. And of course they, oh well, I guess they combined it into one. No, they did get the maximum. Or maximum once and one off the maximum the second time. Alright, thanks Gascon. We got you earlier. You would have been nice. Do you still have enough time to be better than the alternatives here? Most notably Morvid. Morvid is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, plus 7, 16 if we were to play it right now. Whereas Vrand Warrior, I mean, we could Rat Swarm and make it stronger. Vrand Warrior, we said, what, 16? So you'd need to have 12 units get destroyed. Or ideally more for this to pay off, and we're going to get 1, 2... It may still be Morvid. Especially if we Rat Swarm. We got you earlier. Would have been a different story. But alas, we did not. I think what we'll do is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Means we have room for 3 more. Technically, if we fill the row, as we've seen previously, it bricks Ethereal. So we should not do that. 1, 2, 3, 4. We do it here. That does work. So let's do this. Because that way, Morvid is worth more points. Do that. Now I think we will start to need to consume our stuffs on this row. So we're starting to run out of time. With that consumption, we will not be able to consume all these rats. Admittedly, that was not something I was anticipating we would do. Okay. Ooh, I hate that you went after Ethereal right before we got the chance to go after that Harpy Egg. I mean, we could consume with Barbiazzi if we really needed to. That is... it's going to be Slizzard next in all likelihood. I don't think we're looking to play you. I think we're looking at Slizzard, and we're again just consolidating power here at this point. Consuming the big stuff. So we get a maximum power Slizzard that we eventually double down on with the Girdle Giant Strength, and that is really the finisher that we are relying on here, because otherwise they have played one fewer card than us, and we're tied right now. So they are very much in the lead in that case. We could try once again to get a little creative here, and Rapid Evolution I think is still perhaps our best option. I mean, damage, 3 points of damage is not really very helpful for us, presumably. Alright, well, We potentially can do better. We could potentially do a little bit worse with Rapid Evolution. Do they have the highest card, or do we have the highest card? We have the highest card, just barely. So if we happen to get Fill and Tread Mirth, we're in trouble. We could proceed to then Rapid Evolution it on our next turn, if absolutely necessary. I'd rather not, but that's sort of the worst case scenario that we're preparing for. I think we need to go for it, though. It's Cyclops is worth slightly more points. 3 more points, which means functionally the same as if we had gone the 3 damage route, although we saved 1 energy in the process, right? So, alright, fair enough. Okay, damage, sure. Not that much of it, fortunately. And our Slizzard survived, that's key. So now it's this. Don't want you. So now it's you, we need to put you in this row. Can still consume in that row. Should be able to, right? Yeah. But we need you in this row so that we can still have the Slizzards consume you eventually. And again, just maximum consolidation of power. So that means it's you next. And you next. And if we're continuing to Rapid Evolution, then we would do this. And that is technically a Death Wish card. So, I was thinking it was going to be Barbiazi consumes you and you. And then Slizzard consumes you. Other Slizzard consumes you. Double this Slizzard. But we'll have to see which one's technically worth more. Chris boosts a card in their hand by 4. Who knows how many times? We can't tell. So that last card theoretically is pretty big. Now we definitely are not going to want to use Dodric here. We can see what it is, but we got Dodric, or rather, if we got Istrid earlier, would have worked really well with Dodric, as I was saying, but alas, not really the timing we were looking for there. Got unlucky on that, and the Vrand Warrior as well were both cards we wanted to see as early as possible. But so this gives us +6. This means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 damage. This is also 5 damage, but we also care about the power of the card we're consuming, because that means we're doubling more when we use Girdle Giant Strength, so it's definitely going to be you. I think it is actually you as well. There's a chance this happens to hit an enemy that has 3 power or has armor. If it hits you, they're getting additional value. Tell you what, we will go for this. Just to play it a little bit safer. We're fine with this damage. That's fine. Harpy Egg, we will consume. Means this Barbiazi not quite as big as it might have otherwise been, but we're definitely going to consume this with the Slizzards rather than the Rot Fiend, because again, we are maximizing the power. Because this is where all our finishing points are coming from. 55-point Girdle Giant Strength. I mean, at this point, if we were to transform you, even if it is the Fill and Tread Mirth, which I keep on mentioning because it's the one that destroys the highest card on the board, and we have the highest card on the board, and when we have this many points on one unit, that is hugely impactful. But it takes 2 turns to trigger, so if we get it on our last turn, it's just not going to have time to take effect, so we should be fine. We'll do it. A little more, a decent amount more base power, 5 more points of base power, right? So that is something. And then it's Girdle Giant Strength to double you. And we are just really hoping they don't have an answer for you. They don't. Highly boosted, yes. Some damage, yes. But we will take the win. Fortunately, first time seeing that enemy, I am fairly certain. Or if we saw him previously, maybe it wasn't the hard version. That was a little scary, but we made it work. Let's see. We can add Ethereal with the same amount of power. We've seen Bloody Baron in past decks. We are just going into the boss fight now. So we can specifically tailor what we're selecting here based on that, and I don't think there's really any reason to use the Baron unless they damage one of our cards and we're resetting to power one of our cards up, but, you know, for the most part, our cards are either extremely highly boosted, which means we're definitely not going to want to reset them, or they're dead. Like, I just don't really think there are going to be too many opportunities. Technically, if you have Bloody Baron on the board, ready to go with this order ability, then you use Caranthir to create a copy, a 1 power copy of a Slizzard. You can immediately use Bloody Baron to set the Slizzard up to 5 power and make it less vulnerable. That's the one use case I can think of for this, but that is very janky to try to set that up, because that means you need Slizzard in hand, you need Caranthir in hand, you need to have already played Bloody Baron, then you use Caranthir, and that means you've been deliberately waiting to play your Slizzard for a pretty long time at that point, so that feels pretty awkward. And for that reason, we have to do something. Would we perhaps prefer to just get rid of... I mean, these are not our best cards, but they're definitely not our worst cards either. They're sort of middle of the pack. Ones are most... I'm leaning this way, or we re-roll, but how much energy do we have? We have 53. And the thing with our current build is, we, unlike in the past, for Bossing Actress, we've generally had Portal, which we can just spam for tons of pretty reliable points. Don't have a super reliable source of points outside of, I mean, it's probably just going to be Alzur's Thunder, pretty much non-stop, which is not that expensive. But again, this boss does have the ability, I think, to remove some of our energy, at least temporarily, if not permanently. So... are we okay with maybe giving this one reroll? I don't think we've ever done this reroll. Does it only reroll the add or the remove, or does it reroll both of them simultaneously? Basically, if we want to see a different set of cards for both of them, does it cost us 6 or does it cost us 3? Let's find out. Okay. Okay, it does specifically switch just one of these groups. So that is good to know. Sienna is amazing. Repeat the deployability of the next unit that you play during this turn. Do we have any big deployabilities? We have Caranthir. It is the most significant one. That means we should create 2 additional Slizzards, which at that point, suddenly, yes, that does take more time to set up. It would be worth it at that point in time, because that is just so many more points. Again, technically, it is still a win by more points rather than win more often approach, because, if we get to set up 2 Slizzards, we're probably fine. We probably don't need to have 4 Slizzards. That much probably doesn't make a difference. So Sienna in that way is probably still big time overkill, but what other things do we have for deployabilities? Technically, it means we could double down on a Cyclops and destroy 2 cards and get 2 rounds of damage. That's kind of tempting. We have Morvad deployability to boost everyone. That's not bad. Hjalmar damage twice. That's also not bad. You have decent setup for Sienna, actually. Botchling is damage. Or boost if we push over to the Lubberkin. But it's not sure that synergizes all that well. This is pretty sure we only saw 5 base power Rock Theme before, so it's marginally better. I guess we go Sienna. It's ambitious and probably unnecessary. As I was just saying, we would probably prefer to just draw into all of our other cards. But we'll give it a chance, because we already used a reroll. We don't want to blow through all of our energy, just being super nitpicky there. And that means there's only one encounter left, and that is the boss. Turns out the road to get here was a little bit rockier than we might have expected, because we did have one enemy that we were very worried about, and another that we had never seen before and didn't really know how to prepare for. Well, let's jump in. Okay, so we have 50 energy going into this fight. So let's remember what exactly this guy does. So cooldown 3, every 3 turns, spawn a Molten Image. It's a 3 power card that will banish the leftmost card in our hand. Meaning that that's not even going to trigger Death Wish, mind you. Death Wish only gets triggered when a card gets destroyed, not when it gets banished. We can get that back if we destroy this Molten Image. So that's why I was saying before that having damage against this guy is key, because basically if he gets to just banish a bunch of cards from your hand, you're in for a lot of trouble. But if you can consistently take these guys out, then you're in much better shape. And fortunately, they have 3 power, which is exactly enough for us to take out with our Thunder, which means we might just be spamming that like crazy. We do have Caranthir plus Slizzard. That is ideal. Having them in our starting hand is great, because that means we can just set this up right off the bat and not have to worry too much about, having to wait for us to draw into one of them and, not having a Slizzard as early as we'd like to have a Slizzard. So that's nice. I also kind of like having a bad card all the way on the left, because that means that this is the thing that's going to get banished. I mean, we could potentially get it back. We'd like to get it back, but we should still get rid of this, though, because it is still our weakest card. Friend Warrior is nice. We'd like to have it, yes, but, it's not as crucially important as, say, something like a Slizzard is. Probably do still want to have a Cyclops, just because the damage is going to be important. There are going to be some high priority cards to get rid of, because Alzur's Thunder can destroy one of these per turn. Or if they have anything like I don't remember if they have a Defender to make it more difficult for us to target them, or if they will boost them at times to make them harder to remove, or if they have other things that we want to destroy, because I remember they had something like a Phoenix last time that we had to damage possibly multiple times per turn in order to completely shut it down for good. Otherwise, it would have just continued to generate more points for them. So it was just a non-factor the first time we faced this guy, but that could be different this time around if we don't have enough damage. So for that reason, I mean, the Barbiazzi does further contribute toward our consumption of DETLAFF. Do we just go all out points and go super greed mode? Or do we try to see if we maybe swap you out for something that is more of an answer? So we'd obviously like to get, I mean, we can control 3 cards we draw into. But right now, we would probably pick DETLAFF. Technically, we should pick Sienna first, so we can double down on this deploy ability would be the best option. Then we have tons of consumption if the 1-power Slizzards are sticking around for that one turn. But I think we do swap you out.
Which arrogant warlock was it that roused you from the deep?
Oh, perfect. Okay, I was gonna say we can't control that first draw, but we wanted it to be either DETLAFF or Sienna, and technically we wanted it to be Sienna, and then we'd play DETLAFF on the next turn, so we should go Sienna first, then second Slizzard. This means we're going the greed route here. We should get something else that can give us damage. We do have the Cyclops. Oh, we need you. Whew, almost forgot that. Almost forgot that. Okay, we have Erendite, which is 6 damage, so that's one of the reasons why I prioritized Erendite over upgrading DETLAFF previously, was because I knew there were going to be cards like these Molten Images that we were really going to want to destroy. So what we could do, actually, so we want to wait until we get Sienna before we use Caranthir, because ideally he's the target for Sienna to double the deployability. We get 2 additional Slizzards on the board. That's awesome. However, Grand Warrior is our leftmost card right now. Means this would be the one that gets banished. And we like it. And we like it early. If we get it late, then it's not nearly as valuable. Morvid, on the other hand, not as necessary, and is a card that we generally be playing later on in a match anyway. So I kind of like the early Vran Warrior. Then next turn we start setting up all of the Slizzards with Caranthir and Sienna, and then we get DETLAFF down there and just consume like absolute crazy. I think that's the plan. So it is a pretty greedy approach. We do have Cyclops if necessary, but we have, at least initially, we have Erendite plus leader ability, which we can hopefully use to slow down at least the initial problematic units that they spawn in. So I think it is Vran Warrior first. And we have Reason. Want to use anything initially? I think we're saving up for the Thunders. We don't have anything we need to destroy just yet. Well, we will now... we want to get rid of. The burn. Burn an enemy unit. This... burn is 1 damage per turn right at the end of the user's turn. Damage unit with this status by 1 when burning unit is destroyed. Burn adjacent units, so... it's basically bleed, but it spreads. And the most dangerous way they could use that would be on our 1-power Slizzards. Will they have time to destroy those? I don't think so. Not unless they have additional sources of damage, which they very well may. But the burn itself will not be enough because we get 1-power Slizzards. Actually, it's going to be our next turn because Sienna needs to have a turn before she can use her order ability, and then we play Karen Theory after that. But, yeah, because 1-power Slizzards, even if they immediately get burned, it's still at the end of the... yeah, I think we're still fine.
I do so dreadfully miss my darling little sis.
So she immediately, in multiplayer Gwent at least, is like the quintessential case of when you see an opponent play this card, you immediately target it with everything you can to destroy it, because if she gets to use this ability, it is usually humongous. I'm not sure they're going to have the capability to do that, though. But now we do have a target that we would like to get rid of here. Technically, it does now mean that the Slizzard is in the leftmost spot. I mean, it was going to be in the leftmost spot, whether we got you back or not, but... okay, that's fine, because you're going to get boosted pretty regularly. Wildfire. I only vaguely remember what this does.
Name's Reese.
Is that how you pronounce it? Rince? I've never known, and he's in multiplayer Gwent as well, and I've always hesitated to say his name for that very reason. I think I've always said Roince or something like that, but okay. So now what we can do is we can use Sienna, and with Sienna, we can combine that with Karen Theory to create 2 additional Slizzards, which would be amazing, but remind me what this does. Whenever a unit on this row receives damage from any other source, damage it by 1. Okay, so this would be an example. That could possibly kill a 1-power Slizzard, but obviously we're not going to play the Slizzards in that row. So we go Sienna, Karen Theory, use Karen Theory to create a bunch of Slizzards. Oh, I guess 2 separate instances, but we'll just pick the Slizzard both times. Death blow, your opponent loses 3 energy, so that's one of the ways they can remove energy. Order damage enemy unit in a row with wildfire by 1. So Sienna's, she's done her thing. That's fine. Brand Warrior has 2 armor. It will get boosted every turn. It will take the damage from the burning every turn, but starting on our next turn, we'll be doing a whole lot of consumption. So I think what we might look to do here is if we're just spamming Thunder every turn, it's going to take us 2 turns to get rid of. Now I already forget how he pronounced his name. Rience? Technically he's in Erendite range. He was in Erendite range before. Maybe we save Erendite in that case, and we will use leader ability to get rid of you, because you're not going to spawn in one of these guys yet. Cataclysm on this row would be catastrophic. Start of your turn, owner's turn, split. Excuse me? Now, maybe I'm going crazy here, but I'm pretty sure that they just voluntarily chose to damage themselves. Pretty sure that's what just happened. Now, technically, now obviously that means that would, under almost any circumstance, be a terrible idea. I can, however, see why the AI might have chosen to do that, because using a row effect will replace any existing row effect. So I think what happened was there was already a wildfire in our melee row. And so the game said, well, I don't want to replace this wildfire. This wildfire is important, especially when I have Rience on the board. So if I'm going to play this card, then I'm going to need to play it somewhere else where I don't override this. Except that meant playing it on their side. So any logical human would have just not played that card on that turn and waited for this row effect to end, and then they would have done what they actually should have done. and played something else. But alas. Okay, we don't need to worry too much about that. We would like to either play Slizzard on this turn or get DETLAFF down here, because then we can start going with our Slizzard consumption mania. But given how these are 1-power Slizzards and they do have some damage at least, we'd probably like to prioritize getting DETLAFF down as quickly as possible. Playing DETLAFF in the wrong row would have been catastrophic. Don't do that. So now that you're getting boosted up every turn, that is why I'm not too concerned about you being a card that has the burn on it. These guys will continue to get much, much bigger, and we should have, once we get even more Slizzards down here, way more damage or way more boosting, and that's not a big problem. And unfortunate that we lost that Slizzard, but we can, of course, get it back immediately. That's why we wanted to make sure we had the energy. But now we can go and do even more of this. Should lose this burning status as soon as we consume DETLAFF and bring him back out. Oh, technically it does pass the burning. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, 1 damage per turn on a unit that is going to get close to 100 points shouldn't be that much of a problem. Oh, and how did you get boosted? Okay, fine, maybe we will Erendite you after all. Oh, because you were able to, maybe you were able to destroy a card and you had a Deathblow ability, didn't you? Deathblow, your opponent loses, no? Yeah, I'm not sure how you got boosted. Spawn Pyroclasm on this row for 3 turns. Okay, once again, I mean, we already have this guy burning, so that's actually totally fine. So we get our other Slizzard down here, and this is what I was saying we would theoretically want to do if we were trying to just totally maximize our points, was maximize the number of Slizzards we had, and ideally, if we had gone for the additional DETLAFF upgrade, where he would have gotten even more power every time he gets consumed. But we opted for the Erendite because it felt like that was going to give us a little more flexibility, assuming they were going to have some cards we really wanted to get rid of. Was that reinst that much of an issue? Maybe not that much. We perhaps had more energy than we would expect it to have had, and so that has not become much of an issue for us. Maybe that's one of the reasons why, at least initially, it feels as though not a huge deal for us to have had Erendite there. Damage enemy by 5 cures, what they go for. They should go for the Slizzard, actually. But they don't. They could have removed it. They tried to get rid of this Grand Warrior. Maybe because this was just 5 power. They're like, oh, that's not a threat. Oh, I beg to differ. I do beg to differ. You see, I do beg to differ. Because the thing is, all these DETLAFF consumptions, the boosts, they compound. So it's just getting bigger and bigger every turn. And at this point, we might even be looking at maybe a Night Wraith and then using Cyclops to destroy that, because we obviously want these Slizzards to focus on the DETLAFF. That might be the way to go. I think so. And if anything, we'll pass the burning on to the Night Wraith, because we're okay with this getting destroyed. We'd rather that than Sienna. Even if Sienna's already done her thing, this obviously benefits from getting destroyed. Still trying to make DETLAFF burn. Burn a random unit on each enemy row and spawn something else, probably this wildfire. Did they create a copy of one of our cards because of that? I'm not entirely sure. I didn't catch the very end of that. No, I mean, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I know we did get burning on you, which means that is going to get passed over to basically every unit on this row. So be it. As I was saying, I still don't think that's going to be a huge deal. We should use Thunder to destroy this guy, to get back this Cyclops, because that is probably the card we'd like to play here, and now pretty much everything's going to get burned to this row as well. But we have the boosts, so that shouldn't really be an issue, and we'd like to use this to hit you, probably, because we don't want to trigger your death blow. kind of just letting these guys do their thing. Burn an enemy unit, as we were saying. The burns, just don't think they realistically have the capability of adding up to anything that will threaten us here. Unless they have a way to destroy a burning unit, but even then, we have enough powerful burning units that don't think that's too much of an issue. Unless we get extremely greedy and try to just totally demolish this boss, and we do what we did on a few other occasions and have each Slizzard consume one of the Slizzards, consolidate all the power into a single unit, and then use Girdle Giant Strength on it, and try to see how many points we can get out of that. I'm not sure how much of a risk that really is. They just really want to give burning to you. Technically, we don't need to decide until our next turn, but, you know. Oh, technically, the highest one consume the lowest DETLAFF. If we're really concerned about that. But see, here's the thing. If we consolidated all of these points, we'd be at, what, you know, almost a 250 point Slizzard, which would mean at the end of our next turn, after adding one more DETLAFF to the equation, yes, this would be probably a 500 point Slizzard in the last. Oh, actually, we have one more turn anyway. Wait, have we? Oh no, we've not yet played this. Okay. I mean, we could Rat Swarm or Rapid Evolution. One of these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've room for 3 more, which is not full stuff for Rat Swarm. We'd probably rather not do it anyway, and you know, if anything, might want to use Rapid Evolution on one of you guys. We could damage the Synthesis Blaze. We're not gonna have enough damage to destroy it, so it's not a huge deal. It's still gonna get the chance to use all those order charges. I think we just do this, and if it happens to give us Fill and Tread and Mirth, it does not, then we would just Rapid Evolution it again. And we do this. Boost up everyone. Remove 9 energy. Spawn 3 tormented spirits. Don't remember what these do. Death Witch, your opponent gains energy. I mean, we have plenty of energy here, so it's not really a problem. So here's the question. If we want to maximize our total points, we consume you, and then we just consume one Slizzard after the other, consolidate all of our points into one single Slizzard, and then double it with Girdle Giant Strength. If they have a way to destroy a unit that has burning, we lose. I don't think they do. But that is, you know, it's a risk we don't have to take. It's a question of just, do we want to because we can, and we'd like to see if we can score possibly 1,000 points on a boss, because that'd be cool. And at the very least, it's definitely going to be that. Question is just, do we proceed to consume? Is there any way we avoid having our big Slizzard have burning? I don't think so. Right, because this one, once it gets consumed, is going to pass the flame on to all these guys. We'll do it. If it backfires, then we understand. It was our own hubris. But, I mean, it's almost a 300 power Slizzard, so I couldn't resist. I mean, we can Rapid Evolution, and, you know, even if it's a Fill and Tread and Mirth, we still won't have time for it to backfire on us. It's not, anyway. It's a 1-point upgrade. So that's why I did it. So he had a 584 point Slizzard and score 648 points against a boss before their last turn. If they destroy this, obviously we lose. If that happens, we asked for it. You know what? So be it. Fine. I'll take it. If they don't, then, you know, outscoring an opponent by, like, the boss by over 500 points, that'd be pretty cool. So we shall see. We shall see. What is their last play? I think we're fine. I think we're fine. So there you have it. Our first apprentice difficulty run. And, well, it finishes with us beating the boss by almost 600 points. Extends our win streak to 4. Sweet. That's the other thing is that, you know, if, I don't know, like, are there any achievements for win streaks or anything like that? I don't know how much we care about that. On one hand, it's like, oh, cool, that means that we're being nice and consistent and what have you. But on the other hand, if we're kind of focusing less on just winning and focusing more on messing around and having fun with some experimental things, like doing the RNG deck, like doing a just maximum points deck with this type of setup, but, you know, imagine that, but with an upgraded DETLAFF that instead of getting powered up by 1, got powered up by 3. Do the math for that, we are well over 1,000 points if we were to have taken that option in that very match right there. So, you know, those kinds of things where we take unnecessary risks just for the sake of having fun and seeing if we can score more points or do fun and interesting combos, maybe best to save those for when we're not currently on a win streak, because I don't know, like, is there something that happens if we get up to 5, 10 win streak? I have no idea. I have no idea. But either way, we succeed here, and as we've seen in the past, generally speaking, when you make it all the way through, you tend to find some interesting stuff to unlock. We've seen Melusine. I think we unlocked her previously, but we have Horn of Plenty, passive treasure. Whenever an allied unit is boosted, give it Vitality 1. I think we saw that before. This is the start of the new stuff. Jutta. If Jutta is the highest power unit, damage self by 6. She is usually a very high power card in multiplayer, but her number is obscured here, so not entirely sure what number she is. The Beast, at the end of your turn, if this is not the highest power unit on the battlefield, boosts self by 2. I imagine that's probably more for the Bulwark decks. And then Dryad Enchantress here. You're not a unit, either armor or vitality. Not great. Mostly a filler card. Then a new potion, Experimental Distillate. At the start of each battle, boost a random unit in your hand by a random amount between 4 and 8. I mean, it depends a little. I assume that's before you do all the mulliganing. So you might get a bad card that you would normally want to mulligan that gets boosted by 8, and then you're suddenly like, well, I mean, I guess I need to play it. But if you happen to get a good card in your starting hand that gets powered up by anything in that range, then suddenly that could be really useful. So, I don't know. That could be an option. Arin. Immunity and consume 3 allied units, so a big burst of consumption, which would be, presumably, for this Hive Mind deck we were just using. Allsrel, also consumption. Melee row, consume 2 units from your opponent's... 2 units? From your opponent's graveyard. Range row, consume 2 units from your graveyard. That's amazing. Oh, I was going to say, because in Gwent multiplayer, it consumes 1 card, either from your graveyard or your opponent's graveyard. So to consume 2, I was just like, what? It's just objectively twice as powerful? Except in Gwent multiplayer, there are multiple rounds, not just 1 round, so there's, by round 2, round 3, likely to be several cards in each player's graveyard to choose from, whereas in this case, you're only going to get cards in your opponent's graveyard or your graveyard if they get destroyed by damage, so it's a little riskier in that way. Then Oak Critters, give an enemy unit bleeding, not a huge deal. And spawn a copy of self, okay. Transmutation is a new spell. Purify unit and reset its power. Oh, okay. So this is a good example of a way to counter that guy who gives our cards spying and creates copies of them, because purification means you remove any statuses. That includes spying, that includes lock, which at least one of the other enemies, the one that had all the deploy abilities, caused some trouble with that. Now it does reset a unit's power, so that means set it to its base value. So if we had, for example, against the guy who creates copies of us, used this lizard aggressively, got a ton of boosts on it, and it got spying, and then they tried to create copies of it. If we were to purify it, it would remove the spying, so they would no longer be able to create copies of it. However, resetting a Slizzard is not what we want to see. That would set its power back down to what it starts at, 5. So, in that way, in that specific deck that we were just running, it wouldn't be great in that deck. But, and Bulwark as well, you know, if you have a highly boosted Trident infantry that they put spying on, then that also wouldn't be great. But in some other circumstances, if you do this early, it at least gives you an answer for countering all the spying. So it honestly, for that reason alone, it's kind of nice. Then Forktail damage all other units by 1. Generally, you'll want to do that when you have a lot fewer units than your opponent. So if you're going with Hive Mind, but you're focusing on consuming everything possible and not flooding your rows, like you got rid of things like the Night Wraith and whatnot, then that could be useful. Then fill up a Blind Fury. Damage enemy unit by 4, then damage a random enemy by 3, then 2, then 1. So that's got to be for Savage Fury, I think. And Armored Arrakis, give an enemy unit bleeding equal to its base power, probably also for Savage Fury. Oh, this one we're in progress for. We don't even have it yet? Okay. Then treasure card we'll be working toward will be Obsidian Mirror Spawn, 3 1-power copies of an allied unit on its row. Okay. So, how about that for the Slizzards? For the deck we were just running? Go Siana, create 2 Slizzards that way. We had the 2 Slizzards in our starting deck. That's 4 Slizzards. Do Obsidian Mirror. That's 3 more Slizzards for a total of 7 Slizzards. Then you have DETLAFF in that row. You're consuming DETLAFF 7 times every turn. That'd be pretty insane. That would be pretty insane. But that's it for that run. Our first one, in which we increase the difficulty. So I'm actually not sure. I was kind of curious. I was thinking about this in between runs. If upgrading the... what is the effect of increasing the difficulty? Like, do we get more experience? When we finish a run that had more difficulty modifiers, it didn't seem like we got that much more experience, but maybe that's because we didn't increase it that much in the grand scheme of things. And maybe I also haven't really noticed, but does it take more experience to reach new levels as you get higher up? Like, is it 10 experience from level 1 to level 2, but it's 100 experience from level 20 to level 21, and so on and so forth. It just keeps on getting higher and higher. I haven't paid quite close enough attention to notice one way or the other, but that could also be a reason why, despite having increased the difficulty, even if that did give us more experience, it just didn't seem to make a huge difference. But anyways, it is another successful run, and that was our first attempt with Hive Mind, and it started off a little questionable. A lot of Death Wish cards, not a lot of ways to trigger that Death Wish, or at least not a lot of ways to trigger it the way we wanted to. We had some Cyclopses, and we had 1 Slizzard, but once we got an additional Slizzard, that was definitely the key, and of course, upgrading DETLAFF and getting the consistency to always have 2 Slizzards and DETLAFF in our hand for every encounter led to some pretty awesome results, including but not limited to taking out a couple of enemies that seemed, or at least 1 enemy, that looked like it was pretty much a hard counter for us, and defeating multiple enemies by several hundred points, including the final boss. So next time around, I'm not 100% sure what we'll be looking to do. We could, of course, go for another Hive Mind run and use a different leader, namely Shani. So we've not yet tried her. That's generally what we've done in the past, is we've try out a deck, use the first leader, and then once we win with that, switch over, try the next leader, then move on to the next deck, and so on and so forth. However, we have started to unlock additional leaders from the previous decks that we've already played. Like, we've not yet used a Glaze for Bulwark. We've not yet used Melusine for Savage Fury. And obviously, as I just said, we've not yet used Shani for Hive Mind. So, does that mean we should go Shani next? Should we go back to one of our previous decks and try one of those new leaders? So, not entirely sure there. I also was talking a little bit about, do we go for a crazy RNG run? Do we go for just super greed mode, not even necessarily try to win, but just maximize our total points that we score in a given match and see if we can break the 1,000-point mark? Got up to, low 600s, like 630 or something at the end of the previous run, and we were just saying how there are certainly still ways we could get higher still. So, those are the things we'll be pondering, and I suppose let me know in the comments if you guys have a specific thought on what you'd like to see next. Then again, by the time I start up the next run, I may have already done that before you guys get the chance to respond to that question, but we'll We'll see. We'll play it by ear, of course. Thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you next time.